here, just a few comments. Don't forget to finish the title page, so you want to finish that for the. And I would add page numbers probably to the top right-hand corner of the screen. And you can do this here within Google Drive by spacing over spacing over here to the right, and then insert. You can do page number, top of the page. Page number. And now, okay, I don't know what just happened there, but you should be able to type the title and then kind of move it over. Now, for me personally, I would not worry about the running head, which is, running head is kind of like what you have here, but only on the first page, and then afterwards, it's upper and lowercase. So I would just, for sake of simplicity, use upper and lowercase here, and use about the first five, I think 5 words, more or less. Basically what you have here, but use upper and lowercase letters. And you may have to copy and paste this up here. Yeah.
It should appear on every page.
Yeah. But I would do upper and lowercase. Just okay. So just double check that, and I would change the upper and lowercase. Now, let's see. I would change this to the present tense. Well, present tense at this point, let's see. Yeah, I would keep it in present tense. I wouldn't mention this in the abstract. If you want to mention this as limitations, that's fine. Let's say that. There it is. So the findings show that teachers decide, or the teachers deviate Okay, here, why do they deviate from the lesson plan? They're reflecting in action, but what about the reflection in action causes them to, is it because of the students get behind, or some other reason? Okay. Ah. Yeah, okay, so how many words do you have here? Okay. Yeah, I mean, maybe you can just get right to it. Here's to the reasons. Changing skipping. Choosing different change patterns. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. So, add your title. Now here, make sure you capitalize any words here. Okay, now the first paragraph, you start off by talking about the objectives of the lesson plan. And then you lead in the same paragraph towards the end, you start talking about how they deviate on the lesson plan, correct? So I'm making a comment here to maybe look at this topic sentence. One is, in general, try to write a little bit more in the active voice. You're still tending to write, I think, in a lot of cases, I think too much in the passive. But in this topic sentence, I would change it to the active voice, but also include or say something about changing or deviating from the lesson plan, since that seems to be what you're leading up to towards the end of the paragraph. Now, in the next paragraph, it sounds like you're kind of talking about the same thing. So just make sure that you are. Well, let's see. This is your discussion, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's fine. That's fine. So yeah, I would then just kind of revisit your topic sentence here, and you're talking about let's see. I think this is later. Yeah. Okay. So the next paragraph, your heading is about reflection and action, and then the first paragraph in this section, you're talking more about evaluation in the first part of the paragraph. And then the second paragraph, you shift to reflection. So at some point, either make a relationship between reflection and evaluation or change the terms so it makes it clear what it is you're talking about. And that includes the topic sentence. So, so just take.
Reflection.
I'm sorry?
Teacher reflection is
Yeah, teacher reflection. Right. And if the curriculum foundations mentions it, I don't know if they call it evaluation or reflection, but if they call it evaluation, for example, then just make the relationship that, okay, they're doing it through reflection and action, or that you're using the term reflection and action as a form of evaluation or something, so that there's a relationship there. In general, I think you could add a few more citations in the discussion part. You're making a good division between evaluation and discussion, but I think you could add more citations to your discussion to kind of give more support or weight to your own interpretation. Now, in this on page 14, the bottom of page 14, and I remember us talking about this, that one of the sections where the teacher didn't complete, she assigned as homework, and then the next day she didn't check it. Did you look into that at all, or do you have any other additional information to support? Because that might be a question or something that they might ask you as far as a recommendation goes. Is that a valid option? Is that good to do that? or if you say something here that it wasn't checked, they may ask you, well, why wasn't it checked? Do you know why it wasn't why it wasn't checked? So just either, if you have the data, maybe mention it here. If you don't have the data, just prepare yourself to answer that possible question that might come up. Since at this point you're not mentioning any additional information to this, so it may say something. So just check your notes and figure out how you want to prepare yourself for that, because that could be something that they ask. And I think we talked about this too. I would add in the same chart the approximate time frame that the teachers used for each of these, and if they completed it or not. So like each section, like the introduction, how long was it? Did they complete it? Presentation, how long was it? Did they complete it?
They completed or not completed?
Uh-huh. Yeah. Complete, yeah, you can just put completed or not completed, and then time more or less. So we can look and see more or less how much time is being spent on each stage, and that is something that you're probably going to want to discuss, right? It's like, there's a lot of things here that that you can recommend. Like maybe they're spending too much time on one stage, or maybe there's a good reason to spend more time on another stage. But I think by looking at this one chart, adding a little bit more information, we can kind of refer to that throughout your whole discussion. Kind of even go back to it, and say, okay, this is what's happening, and so I would just add, and same for the second teacher. So you can do a side-by-side comparison. Okay, this teacher's spending more time on the presentation. Why is that? And that might be something that you could, in fact, you're probably talking about that, but the chart kind of shows that easily, I think more easily. And then you can probably even use those same charts in your oral defense and talk about that and your interpretation of that. Now this paragraph, all your paragraphs for me were really logical, and I see a good flow here. Now this paragraph at the bottom of page 15, the first part, top of page 16, I don't know, it appears when I first read it that the first half of the paragraph is like a discussion, and then you end with what looks like to be evidence. So this, for me, seems like either out of order or doesn't seem to fit. Like, are you discussing something that you've already talked about, and then I'm not sure.
I think it's
Because typically, like, you've been following a very good pattern of like evidence and then analyzing that, then evidence and then analyzing that. Let's see, and that's what I would recommend continue doing.
it's the analysis of the last paragraph before the sentence.
Okay, so this where you say not completing a stage so frequently is you're talking about this data, the prior paragraph.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. But here you say one teacher said this, so you're throwing in additional evidence, and for me that threw me.
Yeah.
So figure out if this goes up here, or if you need another paragraph or something. But for me, it was a little bit out of order.
Right. That should be in the
Okay. Same way, if you have to move the image or whatever. Okay, did I clarify this point, or do we need to discuss this here? You say, sometimes I feel, Claudia said, sometimes I feel frustrated I don't have time.
No, yeah, that would be,
so what?
It's the reason that she doesn't have.
Right, so, but why does she have enough time? Like, and I'm thinking more like, is it because the students are mixed levels and she doesn't have time to look at or help the lower students, or is the time just simply the content, or
Like
is the time...
the time given for like 15 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So I guess because I understand she's saying that there's not enough time, but if there's any data that you have that would indicate why, maybe she didn't tell you, maybe she doesn't even realize it. But if you look at, let's say, for example, that the teachers, the program says they need to, and this is just an example, they need to cover pages 15 to 20 every day, 5 pages. Well, then maybe the reason is the content, or another reason is perhaps the stages. There's just too many stages, and there's not enough time to apply the application stage or the presentation stage or whatever. So some of it may not come directly from the teacher, but think kind of. I'm encouraging you to kind of look at all your data and analyze it at some point for you to be able to then say, okay, maybe this is why this is happening, even though maybe the teacher at the time that you asked her or him that he didn't really understand why. I mean, they'll say, "Well, I just don't have time," but they don't have time because of lesson planning, or they don't have time to prepare for their own classes, or whatever. There's a lot of different possibilities there. Okay, moving on. Now, at the top of page 17, first paragraph, at the very end, a couple of things. The first, the lesson plan format that teachers are working with is not flexible. So I'm asking here, is the problem the lesson plan itself or how teachers are implementing the lesson plan? So again, someplace in your discussion, this probably will come up, like your interpretation of this, like any recommendations that you make. Is the problem the actual lesson plan itself, or is it the way in which the teachers implement it, or some combination of both? And so I just kind of threw this out there for you to kind of think about, not so much maybe addressing it in this paragraph, but at some point in your discussions, or even preparing for possible questions. Because when I'm looking at this, I'm also trying to think of possible questions, as you should too, in your discussion. What might they ask? Right, what are some things that they may ask about during the oral presentation, and ask themselves when they're reading your thesis? Right? Now the next sentence, at some point, it needs to be revised in order to see the problems that occur in everyday class. So here I felt like this is like really, for me, I thought was something important that it seems like you're mentioning briefly at the end of this paragraph, but that maybe at some point in the discussion you need to talk a little bit more about, like, do they need to, is the problem, again, the lesson plan, do they need to revise the lesson plan? Because when I read this and then I read the next paragraph, you talk about teachers deviating from the lesson plan because of the levels of students. The students, it depends on the students and how they're going to react. And so for me, I looked at this paragraph and I looked at this, and from this paragraph, it's like problem is a lesson plan. Here, it's almost sounding like, well, you know, it's normal. It's not normal, but it's a valid reason that doesn't have anything to do with the lesson plan. It has to do with something with the students. So I just want to bring that to your attention that, yeah, that's how I interpret this. Like, this sounded like you're really going after the lesson plan here, and then all of a sudden, now it sounds like, well, it's the students, and you know, maybe it's a combination of both, but you know, maybe just rewording this. I don't know how you feel about it. You have to. I want you to describe how you feel about it, but make sure that at the end of the day, you're making recommendations. So they deviate. Why do they deviate? And how? So maybe some of it's the lesson plan, some of it's the students, or maybe all of it's one thing, or I don't know. But just make sure that your language communicates that if it's a little bit of a lot of different things, well, then say them. If it's really one thing, and then go after that one thing. So you decide how you want to present this. But the language that you're using here, for me, sounded like really you're going after a lesson plan. And maybe a lesson plan's part of it. If it's part of it, say it. It's part of the problem. Right? That's different than it needs to be revised in order to see the problems. It needs to be revised. You know, it's like saying a lot of the blame is going towards the lesson plan. You could say part of the problem is looking and reevaluating the lesson plan. That's different than saying it needs to be revised. See what I mean? So I think a lot of it's just kind of the language, and this is just being kind of picky here, but I think it will avoid perhaps misunderstandings from the reader, right, or the seminar when they're looking at this.
I can say that the lesson plan format that students use is not flexible because they need to have students use. And that's students to
Yeah, you could, yeah, and if you say that later and tie it into this, okay, then it kind of clarifies it. And but again, if the problem is the lesson plan, then there are too many stages in the lesson plan, I would say something like that, or there's not enough time allocated to each of the stages in the lesson plan, right? So just think about that. Now this Dewey quote you bring up right after Claudia says it depends on how students are going to react with the topic. Maybe they get it very quickly, but sometimes you say very simple things you think they're going to understand very quickly, and they don't. And then Dewey mentions about reflection beginning at a state of doubt, perplexity, and then reflecting to solve a problem. And I'm having a hard time connecting that with Claudia's, with the evidence. Or if you can say something before Dewey to connect the dots, okay? Generally speaking, the citations, I would do something like this. Evidence, analyze in your own words, and then a citation after your analysis. So that instead of jumping right into the citation, let's be quiet in the head. So check that. If you think it fits, fine, but maybe your own words, some sort of discussion to connect that. Teachers evaluate their students, and if the problem is identified, changes are made. Teachers evaluate their students. Okay, so maybe even bringing this up, talk about this, the academic programs. Yeah. So yeah, take a look at that. And, okay, I think I got up to that point. Here we can use lowercase. And I think, check earlier on, I think I mentioned something about pseudonyms. I think occasionally you leave out in parentheses pseudonym. I think it was your paper. This, aspects regarding activities, actually. You ask. Now, if you were paraphrasing here, I would say do not. Be aware of the different aspects that are. How many words do you have?
Total?
And your results in discussion?
It was about 500,
It should be around 2,250 if you leave room for the conclusion.
right?
So this is 2,600, but I don't know if it's short. You might want to bring it back just a bit. Okay. Is this your conclusion?
Oh yeah, that's my conclusion.
Okay.
That's why
Okay. The many different situations. So you're okay then. So the many different situations I can take. So are you reviewing the literature?
yeah.
And these sentences here, as we mentioned, the lesson plan is a basic preparation for the teacher.
We talk about lesson plan.
They're creating the teacher's knowledge and beliefs.
Knowledge and reflection.
Okay. However, sometimes the theory can be good. They make the necessary changes in the class. Get that common space here. As teachers reflecting the action they can necessarily change in class, and this can be changing or skipping the activity, and they make these changes because of the student's needs or the main cause, students' needs, or the main cause, the time they have. Okay, so because of the student's needs, and, or, say, and, see. Okay, so maybe say they make these changes mainly because the time that they have a lesson, but also based on or because of. So three words and then say mainly first, then because of students. Other researchers you get a okay, I'm going to put Frank here. I would just add this, take and then comma or the cut and just bring this sentence up to the prior. Yeah. Yeah. Further research is encouraged in order to solve this concept problem. It is necessary to take. This I don't think is necessary myself, personally. It's clear what you want to say, and here it is necessary to take. Maybe think it is necessary to take Measures. Correcting measures for students to receive the proper classes and for students to be able to take their lesson. Try to think of a closing statement that's a little bit kind of it's what, a little bit kind of deeper, a little bit more kind of closes the whole, like your last paragraph, something kind of. I would replace it, but you can, if you want to, if there's some aspects to that you want to include, fine. The kind of, think of a closing statement that's a little bit broader, deeper, and I would get rid of this blank page here. Is this a journal? Eisner?
I think so.
Okay. Check italics. We want italicize Chicago Journal 91 and not the title. And your add a space here. And this too, I think. No? Is this another? Looks like another journal. And capitalization here. Yeah, check your capitalization.
They only the first word is capitalized?
Yeah, and proper nouns. But only the first word is capitalized and titles in your, like this. Como está bien. Como si tienes, a veces tienes, correcto. Eso está bien. Yeah, Reeves is okay. And Richards is okay. In fact, most of them are okay. It's just sometimes when you copy and paste over from a database, that's what happens typically.
I was correcting, and I think I forgot it.
Okay. And it's not necessary to put the addition since you have so. This is okay. There's no date on this, huh? Yeah, I think we checked that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we checked that. Okay. And codes, right? Here, codes. I would maybe say coding list or coding. And I would add like either categories, subcategories, and codes, or you can use or you can use theme categories and code, and just put it like a colon. So category. Let's see. Okay, I think that's basically it. Any other questions or anything else we need to discuss?
For the presentation, what are like the main
Okay, so for the presentation, you're going to basically begin with the purpose, the problem that you want to investigate. Um, and then you're going to lead right into your literature. So you're going to spend about 8 minutes or so talking about the literature. And after the last 10 minutes or so, the discussion. So you'll lead in, so it'll be the problem, then the method, and in the method you'll talk specifically participants, instruments, and the procedure. Maybe have slides of each of those. And then lead right into your results and discussion. And just like you did in the written thesis, first and analyze and take piece by piece, I would have titles for each of the results and discussion. So whatever thing that it is you're talking about, maybe create a title, a slide heading there. And in the conclusion, we basically summarize what you just said, making suggestions for further research and period. Probably, I think 20 minutes presentation and 10 minutes question and answer. And when you talk about um, when you finish your research review, you want to include your research questions just before you talk about them, and just if you can the thesis. So the literature should tie into your questions, then lead into your results. Essentially, it's going to be the same order there, but talk about the highlights and include any parts that you used in your thesis. And what else? Anything else? Looks good. I think these are just some small, minor changes. I think that will finish up any loose ends here. Don't forget your title page. It's optional about the tutor's name here, so I wouldn't. Personally, I don't think I would include it on there myself. But I would include the rest of this information here, and that's basically it. For this Thursday, if you just want to print directly from Google Drive, that's you've got a couple of charts, don't you? Okay, so maybe download it to Word. But I'm just thinking if you have any more changes, that whether or not to make the changes to Google Drive or Word, well, it's up to you. But,
do we have to include that?
I haven't really talked about table of contents. Probably for the final, I would, but I wouldn't worry too much about it now. I mean, if you want to include it, if you're going to download it already to Word, do you know how to insert table of contents in Word? All right, I'll try to find a creative video, one or two, showing you guys how to. In fact, I was going to do that this weekend. I'll try to do that today. See if I can get something uploaded to Canvas. And so you can try to do that for Thursday. Now I'm going to be in my office for most of the day tomorrow and Thursday, even with the conference. I may go briefly over there, but I'll be here most of the day. So, do you know when you are planning on turning in the final paper? Thursday? Okay. So just make sure it's before 2. I'll probably just stick around here because students will be coming. So I'll just be waiting here for you for your final draft. Yeah. And just make sure that it's bounded or one of those plastic. It's fine. And what else? I guess it's.
And then
That's it there.
corrections will be on me.
So essentially, let's see, you're gonna
That's being on Wednesday.
the first week.
Yeah.
All right. So then the next week, what is that? June. Second week. Next week. So around June 4th, you'll have yeah. So you basically have from May 22nd to like June 4th to make any final changes, and you'll get feedback from the tutors. Like I'll try to get your feedback before then, but you'll get some feedback. Hopefully, in this day, so you'll have like maybe 4 days to make any changes that they. Because whenever you give your presentation, they're going to be looking at your making notes. So. But hopefully those will be minimal. Like, so hopefully.
Okay.
All right, you're welcome. See you then Thursday. Yeah, we're just about finished.
Yeah.
Finished. Yeah.
One,
Yep. Yep. All right. See you later.